winter. I love the cold, I love the dark, I love getting up really early before the sun and sitting with a cup of tea and watching out the window as the world lights up, and I just think there's something so special and magical about this time of year. It wasn't always that way though. I remember when I first moved to Germany specifically, I couldn't stand the winters because it gets dark so early here and it stays dark for so long. You just have a very short window of light hours, and I couldn't handle it for the first year or two that I lived here. And I think the second year that I lived here, Nick gifted me an alarm clock, which was like a sunrise alarm clock. So it was a light and it would slowly light up your room, like kind of like the sunrise. And I really loved that. That was an amazing, amazing gift. And at the time, it made me enjoy the season much more because I didn't feel like I was fighting to wake up every morning. I think, you know, at that time I was working as a teacher in a school, and so I had to be up quite early, and it was just such a struggle to get up in the dark. But now I feel totally different about waking up so early and waking up in the dark. I still have that alarm clock and I do love it, but I haven't been able to use it because I have little babies who sleep in my room. Well, now I have a new baby, and before Esmeralda, she used to sleep in our bedroom, and I didn't want to wake her up when I woke up so early. So I had to find other ways to wake up. Now I have a very quiet alarm clock that I can turn off really quickly to not disturb her. But I'm so excited, and I really look forward to waking up in the morning because I just love sitting in the dark and being all cozy in the winter. I think things did change for me a lot though, as I started to have a new perspective on this season and a new perspective on all those things that previously had been, you know, so tough for me. I think I really struggled and fought with winter. I really resisted her for a long time. I didn't like the cold. I didn't like the dark. I felt like it was just not fun to be outside, and I'm someone who loves to be outside, especially in seasons like spring, summer, and autumn. I mean, you know, getting to enjoy the sun, I love that, and that doesn't, you know, happen in the same way in this season. But I've even learned to really enjoy outdoors activities in the winter, which is something that I used to not as much. But another thing which I think makes this season especially wonderful for me is creating ritual and celebrating holidays, and really making this time a very festive time. And I think regardless of whether you celebrate Advent or Christmas, or, you know, if the winter season is at a completely different time of year for you, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I think creating a festive and cozy environment is something that you can do regardless of the time of year. And I think that celebrating holidays and finding holidays and festivities to highlight and to enjoy can happen at any time of the calendar year. But I think creating rituals around those things can make it really fun and can make the season feel a lot warmer and really make it exciting and special. So in preparation for our winter, we are heading into Advent season, and we love Advent in our family, and I'm excited more than ever now as I see my oldest daughter, who's just 2.5, kind of really awakening to life and seeing this time of year as looking at the lights that are kind of starting to be hung everywhere and reading stories. And I love to share with her my favorite memories. I love to share with her my favorite rituals and create new ones with her. It's a time where we have the opportunity to make wonderful things and to, you know, I feel a special kind of inspiration right now. And I think winter is a time of, you know, a lot of hibernation in many ways, but in other ways, awakening. And a lot of creativity is to be found here when you kind of are more at home, you're more indoors. And so in preparation for Advent, I've done a couple of little crafts and I want to share them with you too. Maybe you'll be inspired. Maybe you can also share some of the things you like to do to enjoy the winter season and to make the most of it. And if you are living in the Southern Hemisphere, I'd be really interested in hearing about how you make the winter season really special and lovely when it's on the other side of the calendar year. But this year I decided to make little Christmas/Advent gifts for Esmeralda, and I decided to paint some little peg dolls, and this was such a fun craft. I had seen a couple of pictures on, you know, Pinterest, or I think of you know, I've even seen them sold, little peg dolls that are painted. I remember seeing little peg dolls sold for a very large amount of money. Just plain peg dolls with like painted in primary colors. And I remember thinking there must be a way for me to make that myself, because it seemed like a very pricey toy, and I'm all for investing in really special toys, but I thought I want to make it myself, and how much more special would it be? And then I found this world where people paint peg dolls and amazing artists paint them and create all kinds of characters. There are like, people make Disney character peg dolls, people make, you know, all kinds of fairy tales, make little family peg dolls. So I decided that I would paint a little version of our family, Esmeralda, Vivian, Nick, and I would also paint a little set of characters from a book that Esmeralda really loves, or there are 2 books by the same author that Esmeralda really loves. They're both by the author Sibylle von Olfers, who's a German, or actually maybe Austrian or Swiss, I think she's Austrian, author from the 1800s, and she wrote these amazing books. We love reading those books. They're just so wonderful and magical, and there are lots of very sweet characters. And I thought I could try to make a few of them. So I did, and I'm so pleased with how they turned out. I think they're so sweet, and I know she's going to love playing with them. She did catch sight of them as they were drying on the windowsill. And I said, "Don't look, those are a surprise." And she looked at me like with these big eyes, and she just kind of walked away like, okay, I'll accept that it's a surprise. So I'm very excited for her to play with those and to open that gift up. I think it will be so special, and something I think she'll enjoy very much. And so she has these 2 little sets. And I also then found another peg doll I had bought a long time ago. I kind of got inspired too to make this little lady who is kind of a mushroom mother, and a couple little mushroom children who I think are adorable, and I think that Esmeralda will like them very much as well. I did make a couple of mistakes while painting, and I had to try to fix them as best I could, but I think that's a big part of the charm, is that handmade touch, and even those little mistakes, she'll definitely not notice them. And all of these little dolls were made with lots and lots of love. The next thing I wanted to make was a centerpiece, an Advent centerpiece. Here in Germany, pretty much everyone has an Adventskranz, which is kind of a centerpiece of some sort, either for the kitchen or the living room, which has 4 candles, and each week of Advent, 1 candle is lit on each Advent Sunday. And I'm sure that this is a tradition or a ritual all over the world, but I had never heard of it or never seen it before really in this way until coming to Germany. And I'm sure that it's very popular everywhere, but for me it was new here. So I have enjoyed taking part in that ritual and that tradition and lighting a candle every Sunday in anticipation for Christmas. And so we had a little kind of a candle holder, which we had gotten a few years ago. It doesn't look very fresh anymore, as you can see. I think there's little bits of like wax, some paint is chipped off, but it's no matter because it will all be covered up when I decorate it. So I really was excited to pull out our little candle holder and set up our little Advent candle centerpiece. A long time ago, I was a florist. I worked in a flower shop. I went to flower school. It's been quite a while since then, so my floristry skills have waned a bit, but some things you never forget, and it's kind of like riding a bike. And I do love to have fresh flowers and fresh arrangements in my home whenever I can. Not all the time, but whenever I can. And so I was looking forward to a little centerpiece. And I wanted to make something very simple, something very basic, something that I could freshen up and switch out over the next few weeks, because it will be there for a few weeks. It probably won't look as fresh in 3 weeks, and maybe before Christmas I'll want to, you know, redo it, because we're going to be hosting Christmas Eve at our home this year, which is really special. But I just got a big bunch of, what is this called? Oh my, pine, kind of evergreen needles. I got a big amount of Tannen in German from Aldi. It was just at Aldi. It was very affordable. I grabbed this big bunch and I put it to work. I also got some clementines to dry, and Esmeralda loves to collect all kinds of things when we're out on our walks in nature, and she had collected some acorns recently and some chestnuts. And so I decided to use these for the arrangement as well. I thought it would be nice, simple, very simple arrangement. If you've never made a centerpiece before, I would say one of the biggest tricks and the biggest keys to making a beautiful centerpiece of any kind, no matter how complex or simple or extravagant or minimalistic you want it to be. I mean, minimalistic is a little bit something else, but is mostly layering. Layering is very important. And of course, if it's minimalistic, like I said, that's going to be a little bit different because you're maybe going to look at form and shape and things like that. But for something like this, layering makes all the difference. It can make a centerpiece really come to life and look really three-dimensional and full and wonderful and festive, no matter what the holiday is or what the occasion is. So I thought with just these 3 or 4 little elements, it would look really nice, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. I also found a vintage ribbon that we had. I have a little box full of ribbons, and I found this beautiful old velvet red ribbon. And I mean, does it get more beautiful than red velvet on an Advent centerpiece? I don't think so. I was just absolutely so ecstatic to find this. And it's really special because this ribbon was Nick's grandmother's, or it belonged to her, I think. We had this box from her and it had lots of ribbons, and I took it, and it was such a gift to be able to take it. And so I thought, how would I integrate this ribbon into the centerpiece? I thought about kind of tying a little bow on each end of the little candle holder. I had thought about cutting it into a couple of pieces and making a couple of bows to just set into the arrangement. But in the end, I decided to just kind of strew the beautiful red velvet ribbon throughout the centerpiece, and I really like that. I'm very happy with it. Maybe next year I will make ribbons, like little bows out of it, but for this year, that's enough. And then I sliced up all of the clementines, which is just such a wonderfully lovely, luxurious kind of an activity to do. It's just so like sensuous to smell all these delicious clementines as you're slicing them up. And then I dried them, and it's very easy to dry out any citrus. You just cut them and you put them in the oven, or in a dehydrator, of course, or even an air fryer. I've done that before as well, but I put them in the oven on a low temperature, about 90 degrees Celsius, for about 3 to 4 hours, flipping every hour. And they turned out just beautifully. Everything that I talk about will of course be in my blog, so you can read the instructions there in detail if you would like to make any of this yourself. The last thing I made in preparation for Advent was an Advent calendar. And this was something I just don't know what it was. I wasn't planning on making one this year, a real Advent calendar, but I had this wonderful kind of like this inspiration struck me because I wanted to find a way to really make each day special for Esmeralda and our conversations and in our anticipation on a spiritual level, because we're Christians and celebrating Christmas is a really big deal for us in the year. It's a really exciting, wonderful, anticipatory time, just a time of celebration and joy. And so kind of anticipating Jesus's birth comes with kind of thinking about him and dwelling on that. And I have this really sweet little book that has a little something to read every morning. And in the book, they had this idea to make a wreath with, I think they just had 4 different stars that you could put on the wreath, or 5, I'm not sure how many. And each one was a name of God, which is mentioned in the Bible. And so you can put it on the wreath as it's mentioned in anticipation. And so I kind of got this idea from that and decided I would make an Advent calendar with the names of God or the attributes of Jesus there. And so this is something which, you know, if you're a Christian and you celebrate Jesus' birth in that aspect of Christmas, this might be something which is interesting to you. But it was so much fun to do a little bit of research and then put a name down for each day of December up until Christmas Day. And it was so wonderful to think about all those things. So I will leave the names in my blog too, if that's something which interests you. But you could make an Advent calendar of anything that you like or that you want. You know, there are all kinds of themed Advent calendars. And of course, mostly Advent calendars are, you know, with chocolate inside or with little gifts. And those are just wonderful. Those are so much fun. But for us, I thought it would be really fun to have kind of a conversation piece for our Advent calendar this year. I have also seen lots of really cool activity Advent calendar ideas where you can kind of think of activities for every day of December and you know, one day you might have hot chocolate, one day you might bake cookies, one day you might, you know, watch a Christmas movie, or I've seen some that are more about, you know, I would love to do one that's more about reaching out to others, like, you know, one day you're going to bake cookies for somebody, or you're going to call someone on the phone, or you're going to, you know, buy someone a coffee at the coffee shop or something like that. I think that would also be a really wonderfully special kind of advent calendar as well, which I'd love to do someday, but I have lots of ideas. And for this year, this one is the one I made and I'm really happy with it. It's so lovely. I always feel like I want kind of a, I don't know, a Little House on the Prairie kind of look to a lot of my kind of Christmas decorations. I think that's the ultimate kind of winter Christmas aesthetic that I love, is kind of Little House on the Prairie Christmas. Just very handmade, very rustic, warm, just I love that. So that is kind of what I went for, and I feel like it has that kind of quality to it. So I'm very happy with how it turned out. And the way that I made the advent calendar was I just cut out all of these stars and I just made them with some leftover cardboard that we had from a cardboard box. So talk about recycling, absolutely like recycled DIY. I cut out all these stars from a cardboard box. Then I painted them all with acrylic paints again. I had the acrylic paints out for the little peg dolls. So I decided I'm going to use them to paint these stars, and I painted them green, red, silver, and gold. And yeah, I painted them, and then I just wrote the numbers on one side, and on the other side the Advent theme, which for me was the names of God, the names of Jesus, and but it could also be, you know, whatever you want it to be for any activities or any, you know, wishes. My sister told me, my sister had this idea too, which I don't know, this is maybe a thing too, but some people will have, you know, a verse of the Bible or a poem or something, and they'll kind of put one word for each day. They'll try to find some piece of text that has 25 words, and each day will be a word on an advent calendar. And I don't know, you know, you could make a little door for each word, or you could do something like this with the stars, and then you kind of learn the little rhyme or learn the verse by the end of the month, which I think is really also a sweet idea. So there is just an endless amount of ideas of what one could do with this. And in the end, I took some more of the greenery and some oranges or clementines that I had tried out, and I kind of wove them together and put them on as the top part of the string, which will hold up my advent calendar. My advent calendar is just this, I found this stick, we went collecting, we went and looked for sticks, and we found this one and it fit just right. We went to the forest, and that also was such a fun part of the process, because just being out in the forest is so much fun, and to look for the perfect stick was something that we just had a lot of fun doing and really, really enjoyed. So yeah, those are the big kind of preparatory crafts we've been making in our home as we prepare for the Christmas season. But I also, at the very beginning of the Christmas season, I would say, still in November, we celebrated St. Martin's, which I mentioned, and I think by now I maybe have, you know, shared a little bit on Instagram or on my blog about how we made the lantern. But that was another really fun craft, was making a paper lantern. And I think that even if you don't celebrate St. Martin's, or even if it's not a part of, you know, your culture or anything like that, you could have a lantern. I think a lantern's a beautiful piece of decor. Now the little lantern sits in Esmeralda's room and just lights up her room in the evening. I turn it on every night, and she loves looking at it. It's so lovely, especially because we use these natural materials, and it just brings warmth and coziness into her room. Especially because now it is so dark, and the winter really feels kind of, there's just a certain winter vibe, and having fire and having warmth is what I think we just crave. And so having that there was just so, so lovely. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about our crafting in anticipation of Advent. I'd love to hear what you're doing. If you have Advent preparations, if you enjoy celebrating Advent, if you enjoy making things for this holiday season, making gifts, if you like to get an advent calendar. I know there are so many beautiful different kind of crafting related advent calendars. I know there are gorgeous yarn advent calendars, which honestly I love to watch people open up their yarn advent calendars. I feel like I live vicariously through them and so enjoy the surprise of little minis or skeins of yarn. Just so special to imagine that each day, because you have a little bit of something that you can make with, and I love that idea. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like, and you can find me also on merryweatherliving.com and on Instagram as merryweatherliving. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your 2022, and I'll see you next time. Bye!